Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're looking at, well, a pretty significant shift happening in Gulf security.
A really fundamental one.
For decades, these Gulf states, they relied on this kind of informal, non-binding security understanding with the U.S., like a handshake deal.
Yeah, an implied promise.
And that promise, based on our sources, seems to be devolving. It's forcing countries like Saudi Arabia to make a pretty dramatic pivot.
Towards two things, really. Either getting truly ironclad formal guarantees from the U.S., or if that doesn't work out, looking for solutions within. Deep regional self-reliance.
It really exposes how fragile relying on an external protector can be, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Our sources show this profound anxiety because the old model, well, it failed when it was actually tested.
And there's one specific event that really hammers this home, right? It's kind of the hook for this whole deep dive.
Exactly. The 9 September attack by Israel on Qatar, on Doha specifically.
Just think about that for a second. You've got Israel, a major U.S. ally, striking Qatar, which hosts CNTCOM headquarters, a massive U.S. military presence.
It's a complete paradox, isn't it? The U.S. has troops, bases, security ties with both.
Yet Washington either couldn't or perhaps wouldn't stop one strategic partner attacking another.
And that single event, it just crystallizes the, let's say, existential doubt that's now gripping the whole GCC bloc.
Okay, so our mission today is to unpack why that traditional alliance, that handshake deal, just isn't seen as enough anymore.
And crucially, what Riyadh and its neighbors are trying to build instead.
Right. This shift away from, 70 years of implied protection towards explicit defense pacts or regional integration. Let's trace how that confidence eroded.
Well, the Gulf states seemed okay, relatively speaking, with the informal setup for a long time, until they realized the U.S. commitment wasn't absolute.
Conditional.
Exactly. And the first big crack, the first real wake-up call, was September 14th, 2019.
The attack on the Saudi Aramco facilities.
Yeah, a highly sophisticated missile and drone attack. It wasn't just the scale, which was unprecedented. The Saudis saw it as direct punishment for siding with the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign against Iran.
And the real shock wasn't just the attack itself, but what came after, or rather what didn't come after.
Precisely. The U.S. condemned it, sure, verbally,
Right.
but took zero concrete action, no retaliation, no significant defensive move against Iran. For Riyadh, this was just a massive, immediate failure.
A failure of deterrence.
Completely. They had U.S. assets nearby. They were buying billions in U.S. weapons.
And yet, when actual missiles hit their economic heartland,
The informal agreement proved, well, hollow. They suddenly realized that for Washington, the political cost of getting entangled might outweigh that implied promise of protection.
Okay, so 2019 showed the U.S. might be unwilling to act decisively against a foe, Iran.
Right.
Then this year's attack on Doha seemed to show the U.S. was unable maybe to even control a friend, Israel.
Even with U.S. assets right there on the ground.
Yeah. That double blow, it just created this environment where the Gulf states started seeing Washington as, frankly, an unreliable guarantor.
And that's the catalyst. That's what sparked this whole geopolitical pivot.
They realized having troops and buying fighter jets doesn't automatically equal an assurance of defense.
Nope. So they started demanding something concrete, legally binding.
Which brings us to that push for the ironclad guarantees. The Saudis weren't just complaining, they actively demanded a formal treaty. What did that look like?
Well, Riyadh wanted something like NATO's Article 5, or, the U.S. treaties with Japan or South Korea, real treaty allies.
So requires official signing.
Buy-in from Congress, crucially, something that would last beyond one U.S. administration.
Given the swings in U.S. politics, that makes sense. They wanted an unquestionable commitment.
A full commitment.
And the U.S. did respond, didn't it? There were proposals on the table, Biden in 23, Trump more recently.
Yes, but both came with a massive string attached.
The normalization condition.
Exactly. Both offers tied the defense pact directly to Saudi Arabia, normalizing relations with Israel.
And that turned out to be the sticking point. The deal breaker.
It was the political hurdle they just couldn't clear. The deals fell apart because Israel wouldn't meet the core Saudi demand.
Which was?
Agreeing to the creation of an independent Palestinian state. Netanyahu's very public opposition to a two-state solution, plus the whole political climate.
It just torpedoed the whole thing.
Completely.
But hold on. You're saying that even with these huge security fears, 2019, Doha, the Saudis, still walked away from a U.S. defense pact over the Palestinian issue.
That's what the sources suggest, yeah.
Doesn't that imply they prioritized, regional politics or maybe public opinion over immediate U.S. protection?
It certainly suggests the political cost of abandoning that position, both internally and regionally, was seen as higher than the risk of maybe having to rely more on themselves.
Interesting calculation.
And furthermore, the sources also hint that even if they had signed a pact, it might not have been the silver bullet they hoped for.
Which raises that tricky question about the limits of any security guarantee, right? Even the formal ones.
Exactly. I mean, look at NATO's Article 5. It's the gold standard, supposedly. It says an attack on one is an attack on all, but then it adds this crucial phrase. Members will take such action as it deems necessary.
The wiggle room.
Huge wiggle room. It does not automatically mean the U.S. cavalry charges over the hill. Members consult, they assess.
And they can decide intervention isn't in their interest.
Absolutely. They weigh the risks. So the analysis here is, why trade away major political capital for a paper guarantee that might still not deliver when things get really tough?
Okay, so the informal arrangement failed. The formal one was politically impossible, or maybe structurally flawed anyway.
Which leaves
the internal solution, looking inward. This focus on GCC integration is being called a real inflection point.
It is. The idea is moving beyond just talking cooperation to actual deep defense integration among the 6 GCC countries.
Now, this isn't totally new, is it? The Peninsula Shield Force.
Right. Agreed back in 1984. And there was a joint defense agreement in 2000.
But what's the reality on the ground today?
Yeah.
2025.
It's largely symbolic, to be honest. Mostly consultations, joint exercises.
Except for Bahrain in 2011.
That was the one major operational deployment, yes. But it's nowhere near a truly integrated command structure that could handle a major attack. We're still a very long way from a Gulf NATO.
So why the delay? Decades of talk, little integration. What's holding it back?
Well, the sources point to some pretty powerful political roadblocks, mainly historical mistrust between the members.
And very different foreign policy approaches sometimes.
Definitely. I mean, just look at the Qatar blockade a few years back. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain against Qatar.
Our relations have improved since then, obviously.
Yeah.
The solidarity after the Doha attack showed that.
True. But that legacy of internal rivalry, it's significant. Countries worry about sharing sensitive defense or giving up sovereign control over their military command, hedging their bets.
That history makes a unified command seem like a massive challenge, both technically and politically.
It is. But the sources suggest integration doesn't have to be all or nothing, not right away. It can be incremental.
Okay, so what are the first steps? Where can they start pooling resources now for tangible benefits?
The sources lay out 5 specific areas. Starting points, if you will.
Let's hear them.
Okay, first, logistics and supply chains. Second, technological innovation, maybe joint R&D. Third, defense industrial management and production. Fourth, intelligence sharing. And fifth, integrated air and missile defense.
Right, let's pause on that third one, defense industrial management. What does that actually involve? It sounds complicated.
It's about shifting from just being big buyers of foreign weapons to actually developing, producing, and maintaining systems together. The technical challenge is huge because everyone bought different kit over the years. US, French, British, now Chinese stuff too.
So standardization is key.
Absolutely. Shared platforms, shared maintenance, maybe shared funding for regional R&D. Without that, you just have like 5 or 6 separate logistics tails that can't really support each other in a crisis.
And getting that technical alignment, that interoperability, that sounds like maybe the biggest immediate hurdle, even more than the politics.
The sources seem to suggest it's a massive immediate challenge, yes. Requires real long-term commitment.
Okay, but here's a counterintuitive point from the sources. This push for internal integration, for self-reliance, it's not necessarily anti-American.
No, not at all. That's crucial. A more unified, capable Gulf defense bloc actually fits pretty well with U.S. policy goals. Washington has been encouraging regional cooperation for decades.
They want allies who can handle more of their own security challenges.
Exactly. Burden sharing, essentially.
So paradoxically, even as the Gulf states try to rely less on direct U.S. intervention, they still need the U.S. to help them build that self-reliance.
Absolutely. The U.S. is still the key facilitator here. Yeah. U.S. officials, U.S. tech, U.S. training, that's what can bridge the gaps in equipment and doctrine.
So it's about pairing U.S. know-how
with Gulf financial muscle and growing manufacturing ambition to create something genuinely sovereign but still, compatible.
So for you listening, what's the big takeaway here? It seems the old model, relying solely on a powerful friend, is seen as broken in the Gulf now.
The priority has shifted. It's about strengthening the home front through real, deep regional teamwork.
After that emergency summit in Doha, the GCC leaders pledged to activate a joint defense mechanism. Sounds serious.
More than just words this time, perhaps. The sources suggest the only way to actually achieve that self-reliance they crave is to, well, fully commit to trying it, overcoming both the political baggage and these huge technical hurdles.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you. If the U.S. can't offer that ironclad guarantee and the GCC does manage to build this more unified defense capability, what does that ultimately mean for the long-term need for U.S. bases in the region, and for America's ability to project power globally, something to definitely keep an eye on?